Commander Zephyx of the Korthak Empire stared at the blue-green planet through the viewing screen of his warship. The third planet from the yellow star looked peaceful, almost inviting. His scaled fingers drummed against the armrest of his command chair as he studied the readings. "Commander, we're detecting primitive radio signals from the surface," reported his communications officer, Vex. "They appear to be chaotic. Multiple languages, conflicting transmissions." Zephix's mandibles clicked in amusement. Another divided species. How typical. He had encountered dozens of such civilizations in his 30 cycles of service to the Empire. Young species that hadn't yet learned to unite under a single banner were always the easiest to conquer. "What do our sensors tell us about their military capabilities?" he asked his tactical officer. "Minimal, sir. They still use chemical propulsion for their spacecraft. Most of their weapons appear to be projectile-based or use primitive explosives. They have nuclear capabilities, but their delivery systems are crude." "And their population?" "Approximately 7 billion individuals spread across the major land masses." Zephix nodded. 7 billion was a substantial number, but numbers meant nothing against superior technology. The Korthak Empire had conquered species with populations in the trillions. What mattered was organization, technology, and the will to fight. These creatures, humans, according to the intercepted transmissions, seemed to possess none of these advantages. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission directed at us," Vex announced, his voice betraying surprise. "They detected us already?" Zephix's confidence wavered for a moment. His ship was equipped with advanced cloaking technology. "No, sir. This appears to be a general broadcast. They're trying to communicate with any potential alien life." Zephix's amusement returned. "Put it through." A primitive audio-visual transmission filled the screen. A female human with pale skin and brown hair appeared, wearing what looked like a white coat. Behind her were symbols and equations that Zephix's computer immediately translated. "Greetings to any intelligent life that might be receiving this message," the humans said in their language called English. "My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and I represent the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence project on Earth. We come in peace and hope to establish contact with other civilizations." The transmission continued for several minutes, showing images of human achievements, their art, their music, their science. Zephix watched with growing confidence. These creatures were indeed primitive, still bound to their single planet, still dreaming of contact with the stars rather than conquering them. "How quaint," he muttered. "They actually believe first contact will be peaceful." His officers chuckled at their commander's wit. "Sir, shall we proceed with standard occupation protocol?" asked his tactical officer. Zephix considered his options. The Empire's standard approach was swift and decisive. Destroy military installations, eliminate leadership, and establish control through overwhelming force. But looking at this peaceful little world, he wondered if such measures were even necessary. Begin with a demonstration, he decided. Target their largest military installation. Something that will make them understand their position without causing excessive casualties. "We want workers, not corpses." "Yes, sir. Locking onto coordinates now." As his crew prepared the ship's primary weapon, Zephix allowed himself to feel satisfied. This would be one of the easier conquests of his career. The humans seemed so naive, so hopeful. They would learn quickly enough that the universe was not the peaceful place they imagined. The weapon charged with a low hum that vibrated through the ship's hull. On the screen below, Zephix could see the humans going about their daily lives, completely unaware that everything was about to change. "Weapon ready, sir." Fire. A beam of concentrated energy lanced down from space, striking a massive military complex on one of the human continents. The installation vaporized instantly, leaving only a crater several kilometers wide. The blast was visible even from orbit, a brief flash of light against the planet's surface. Excellent. Now, open a channel to their leaders. It's time they learned their place in the universe. As the communications array came online, Zephyx prepared his standard conquest speech. He would offer them the choice that all conquered species received: submit completely to the Empire and serve as laborers, or face total annihilation. Most species, when faced with such overwhelming power, chose survival. But as he waited for the human governments to respond, something unexpected happened. Instead of panic or immediate surrender, the radio chatter from the planet's surface intensified. Military communications increased rather than decreased. And most puzzling of all, the humans began launching more of their primitive spacecraft. "Sir, they appear to be mobilizing," reported the sensor operator, confusion evident in his voice. "Mobilizing?" Zephyx's confidence flickered. "Against what? They must know they can't fight us." "I'm detecting weapons being moved to defensive positions across multiple continents. Their military forces are going to high alert rather than standing down." Zephyx felt the first stirring of unease. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen a species respond to a demonstration of superior force with increased aggression. Fear, yes. Surrender, certainly. But this apparent determination to fight was unusual. "Sir, incoming transmission from the planet's surface. Put it through." The screen filled with the image of an older human male wearing what appeared to be a military uniform, decorated with various insignia. His hair was gray, and his face was lined with age, but his eyes burned with a fierce intelligence that made Zephyx uncomfortable. "To the alien vessel in orbit around Earth," the human began, his voice calm but filled with barely controlled anger. "I am General Marcus Thompson, Supreme Allied Commander of Earth Defense. You have committed an act of war against humanity by destroying the Cheyenne Mountain Complex. We know you're listening, and we have something to say to you." The general leaned forward, his gaze seeming to penetrate the screen, and stared directly at Zephyx. "You made a mistake. You assumed that because we haven't spread to the stars yet, we're weak. You assumed that because we fight amongst ourselves, we can't unite against a common threat. You assumed that because our technology seems primitive to you, we can't hurt you." The human's expression hardened. "You're about to learn just how wrong you are. We've been preparing for this day longer than you know. We've seen the ruins of other civilizations in our archaeological digs. We've found the crash sites, we've recovered the technology, and we've been getting ready." Zephyx felt a chill run down his spine. The human's confidence was unnerving, but surely it was just bravado. What could a primitive species possibly do against the might of the Korthak Empire? "You want Earth?" General Thompson continued. "You're welcome to try to take it. But understand this. Humanity doesn't surrender. We don't kneel, we don't serve, and we sure as hell don't go quietly into the night." The transmission cut out, leaving the bridge of Zephyx's warship in stunned silence. "Sir," the communications officer said quietly, "we're detecting massive energy readings from the planet's surface. Multiple locations." "What kind of energy readings?" "I'm not sure, sir. They're unlike anything in our databases." On the screen, points of light began appearing across Earth's surface. Not the warm glow of cities, but harsh, brilliant points that hurt to look at directly. They pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost organic, almost alive. "Sir, I'm reading weapons charging," the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with worry. "Massive weapons. Energy signatures off the charts." "That's impossible," Zephyx said, but his voice lacked conviction. "They don't have the technology." As if in response to his words, the first human weapon fired. It wasn't a beam like the Korthak weapon, nor was it a projectile. It was something else entirely. A pulse of energy that seemed to bend space itself around it. The pulse raced up from Earth's surface faster than anything Zephyx had ever seen, covering the distance to his ship in seconds rather than minutes. "Evasive maneuvers!" he shouted, but it was too late. The pulse struck his ship, and alarms began wailing throughout the vessel. Emergency lights bathed the bridge in red as system after system went offline. "Damage report! Shields down to 40%, sir. Primary weapons offline. How did they—" Another pulse fired, then another. Earth's surface was lighting up like a constellation as weapon after weapon came online. Each pulse that struck the ship sent shockwaves through the hull that threatened to tear the vessel apart. "Return fire!" Zephyx commanded, but his weapons officer shook his head. "Weapons are offline, sir. Whatever they're hitting us with, it's disrupting our power systems." Through the chaos, Zephyx heard something that made his blood freeze. Laughter, human laughter, broadcast on all frequencies from the planet below. "Did you really think," came General Thompson's voice over the communication system, "that a species that survived ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and 2 world wars would just roll over for you?" Another devastating pulse struck the ship, and Zephyx felt the deck shudder beneath his feet. "We've been watching the stars for threats like you for longer than you know," the general continued. "We've prepared. We've planned. We've built weapons that shouldn't exist according to our physics textbooks. And now you get to be the first to experience them." "Sir, hull breach on decks 7 through 12, came a panicked report. "We need to withdraw." Zephyx stared at the planet below, watching as more and more weapons came online. The peaceful blue-green world he had planned to conquer was revealing itself to be something else entirely. A fortress, armed and ready for war. "No," he murmured, his voice shaking with fear for the first time in his military career. "This can't be happening." But it was happening. The humans, the supposedly primitive humans, were fighting back with weapons that defied understanding. And they were winning. "All ships," he commanded, his pride finally cracking under the weight of reality. "Retreat to safe distance. Signal the Empire. Tell them—" He paused, struggling to find words for what he was witnessing. "Tell them we may have found something we can't conquer." As his damaged ship limped away from Earth, Zephyx caught one last transmission from the planet's surface. It was the same female scientist from the earlier broadcast, Dr. Sarah Chen, but now she wasn't speaking about peace and cooperation. "To any other alien civilizations monitoring this engagement," she said, her voice cold and clinical, "let this serve as a warning. Humanity welcomes peaceful contact and trade with friendly species. But if you come to our world with hostile intentions, if you threaten our people or our planet, you will face consequences beyond your comprehension." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a promise that made Zephyx's scales itch with primordial fear. "We are humanity. We are survivors, and we are no longer alone in the universe. But neither are you." Deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Dr. Sarah Chen stood before a massive wall of screens, displaying data from humanity's first space battle. The underground command center buzzed with activity as technicians monitored weapons systems that had been hidden from the world for decades. "Target acquisition successful on the retreating vessel," reported Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez from his station. "Do we pursue?" "Negative," General Thompson replied from the Central Command platform. "Let them run. They need to report back to whoever sent them." Sarah watched the alien ship disappear into the void, its hull scarred and smoking from humanity's unexpected response. Around her, the command staff celebrated, but she felt no joy. This was only the beginning. "General," she called out, "we need to talk, privately." Thompson nodded and gestured toward his office. As they walked through the corridors carved from living rock, Sarah couldn't help but remember the day everything changed. It had been 17 years ago when her team at SETI received the first signal. Not the peaceful greeting they had hoped for, but an intercepted military transmission from something called the Korthak Empire. The office door sealed behind them with a soft hiss. Thompson poured himself a cup of coffee from an old military thermos and offered her one. She declined. "How long do you think we have?" he asked, settling into his chair. "Based on the ship's trajectory, maybe 6 months before they return with a fleet," Sarah replied. "Probably sooner." Thompson nodded grimly. "Then it's time to activate the Lighthouse Protocol." Sarah's stomach clenched. The Lighthouse Protocol was humanity's last resort, something they had hoped never to use. "Are you sure? Once we light the beacon, there's no going back. Every hostile species in this part of the galaxy will know exactly where we are." "They already know where we are, Sarah." "That ship isn't going to forget us anytime soon." He leaned back in his chair, looking every one of his 68 years. "Tell me honestly, how ready are we?" Sarah pulled up a holographic display from her wrist device, showing readiness statistics that made her both proud and terrified. "Better than we hoped, not as ready as we'd like. The Luna-based defense grid is operational. Mars Station has been running weapons tests for 3 months. The asteroid belt mining operations have been converting to weapons platforms as planned." And the ships. 1,200 vessels of various classes, all hidden in the outer system. The big question is how they'll perform in actual combat rather than simulations. Thompson grunted. "I suppose we're about to find out." He activated his own display, showing a map of human space. "What the Korthak don't realize is that we've been having this conversation for the better part of 2 decades. Sarah remembered those early days after the first intercept. The world governments had initially panicked, then argued, then finally done something unprecedented. They had united. Not publicly, of course. The citizens of Earth still believed their governments bickered and fought over trivial matters. But behind the scenes, every major nation had poured resources into the Terra Defense Initiative. "Sir," came Rodriguez's voice over the intercom, "we're receiving reports from monitoring stations across the system. Something big is happening." They hurried back to the command center, where the massive displays now showed feeds from hidden observation posts scattered throughout the solar system. What they saw made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. Ships were declaking throughout the system. Not alien ships, human ships. Hundreds of them, emerging from asteroid fields, planetary shadows, and deep space positions where they had waited in silence for years. "My God," Thompson whispered, "I knew we had them out there, but seeing them all at once—" The ships were beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. They bore no resemblance to the crude chemical rockets that humanity showed to the world. These vessels were sleek, angular craft that seemed to bend light around them. Their hulls were dark as space itself, covered in panels that could absorb and redirect energy. "The deception worked," Sarah said, watching as ship after ship revealed itself. "Everyone thought we were still planet-bound." The truth was that humanity had been building a secret space fleet for 15 years. While the world focused on the International Space Station and Mars rovers, the real work was happening in hidden shipyards built into asteroids and on the dark sides of moons. "Admiral Chen reporting?" came a voice over the comm system. Sarah smiled at hearing her younger brother's voice from the bridge of the UES Defiance, the flagship of humanity's hidden fleet. "Admiral," Thompson responded formally, "you are cleared to begin Operation Starbreak." "Understood, General. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Execute Starbreak protocols." On the screens, the human fleet began to move. Ships that had waited in silence for years suddenly came alive, their engines painting brief flowers of light in the void. They moved with purpose and coordination that spoke of countless hours of practice in the deep dark. "Sir, we're receiving priority signals from our outer system monitors," Rodriguez reported. multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system. The screens shifted to show the outer reaches of the solar system, where space itself seemed to tear open in dozens of places. Alien ships poured through the rifts, not just the single vessel that had attacked earlier, but an entire invasion fleet. Sarah counted at least 200 vessels of various sizes, from scouts to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything humanity had built. The Korthak Empire had taken the human response seriously. "Admiral, you have contacts on approach," Thompson communicated to the fleet. "We see them, General. All ships are moving to intercept positions. Time to show them what humanity can really do." The alien fleet advanced in a traditional formation that spoke of countless successful conquests. They had overwhelming numbers and superior firepower, and they knew it. What they didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for exactly this scenario. "Launching ghost satellites," reported the tactical officer. Throughout the system, invisible platforms activated, creating a web of sensor networks and communication relays that turned the solar system into humanity's home field advantage. "Sir, the alien fleet is slowing," Rodriguez announced. "They're detecting our ships." On the display, the Korthak formation wavered as they realized the true scope of what they faced. They had expected to fight a planet-bound species with primitive weapons. Instead, they found themselves facing a fleet that matched their own numbers and moved with tactical sophistication they hadn't anticipated. "Admiral Chen, you are weapons-free," Thompson authorized. "Copy that, General. All ships, light them up." What followed was unlike anything in human military history. The space around Neptune lit up with weapons fire as humanity's hidden fleet engaged the alien invaders. The human ships moved like predators, using their superior maneuverability to strike from unexpected angles. The weapons they deployed were beyond anything in Earth's public knowledge. Particle beams that could punch through alien armor, gravity wells that crushed enemy ships, and experimental weapons that seemed to operate outside conventional physics. "How are we doing this?" Thompson asked Sarah, watching as human ships danced between alien formations, dealing damage while avoiding return fire. 20 years of preparation," she replied. "We found wreckage from their previous conquests, scattered throughout the galaxy. We studied their technology, learned their weaknesses, and built weapons specifically designed to counter their advantages." The battle raged for hours, but gradually, the tide turned in humanity's favor. The Korthak ships were powerful, but they were designed to fight species that couldn't match their technology. Against an enemy that understood their capabilities and had prepared countermeasures, they struggled. "Admiral, this is General Thompson. Status report." "We've destroyed or disabled roughly 60% of their fleet, sir. The remainder are attempting to retreat, but we're not letting them leave empty-handed." On the screen, Sarah watched as human ships pursued the fleeing aliens, not to destroy them all, but to ensure they carried a message back to their empire. Earth was no longer a helpless target. It was a fortress, defended by warriors who had turned preparation into an art form. "Sir, incoming transmission from the alien flagship," Rodriguez reported. "Put it through." The screen filled with the image of the same Korthak commander from earlier, but now his scaled features showed shock and fear rather than confidence. "Humans," he said, his voice hollow with defeat. We underestimated you. This was not supposed to happen. No species has ever—" "How did you know we were coming?" Thompson stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of someone who spoke for an entire species. "Because we listen, Commander. We watch, we learn, and we prepare. You're not the first hostile species we've encountered evidence of, and you won't be the last." The alien's mandibles clicked nervously. "The Empire will not accept this defeat. They will send more ships, larger fleets." "Let them come," Thompson replied calmly. "Every ship they send will be destroyed or driven off. And eventually, they'll learn the same lesson you're learning today. What lesson? Thompson's expression hardened with the resolve of a species that had survived every extinction event their planet could throw at them. That humanity doesn't just survive, Commander. We thrive, we adapt, we overcome, and we never, ever give up. The transmission cut out as the alien flagship limped away, trailing atmosphere and debris. Around the command center, the staff monitored the retreat of what remained of the Korthak invasion force. "Think they'll be back?" Rodriguez asked. Sarah considered the question as she watched the last alien ship disappear into hyperspace. "Eventually, but next time, they'll bring friends, and so will we." She was thinking of the signals that had already gone out on hidden frequencies, not to hostile empires, but to the other species humanity had been quietly contacting for years. Species that had also been attacked by the Korthak Empire and had been waiting for someone strong enough to stand against them. "General," she said, turning to Thompson, "I think it's time to make some new friends." Thompson nodded, understanding immediately. The game had changed. Humanity was no longer hiding in the shadows, hoping to avoid notice. They had announced themselves to the galaxy as a power to be reckoned with. The question now was whether the galaxy was ready for humanity. 6 months after the Korthak Empire's failed invasion, the cargo bay of the UES Defiance had been converted into something unprecedented in galactic history, a diplomatic meeting hall where representatives of 17 different species gathered around a circular table made of crystallized starlight. Admiral David Chen stood at the head of the table, looking at beings that 3 years ago most humans would have considered pure science fiction. There was Ambassador Kelthara of the Ethereal Collective, whose translucent blue form seemed to shift between dimensions. Next to her sat the rocky, mountain-like bulk of Groundbreaker Thane from the Stoneheart clans, while across the table, the insectoid Queen Zith of the Hive Worlds clicked her mandibles in what David had learned was thoughtful consideration. "The Korthak Empire has ruled this section of the galaxy for over 1,000 years, Queen Zith said, her voice translated by the universal communication device humanity had developed. "They have conquered 47 species, enslaved countless billions, and destroyed entire civilizations. What makes you believe that your alliance can succeed where others have failed?" David gestured to the holographic display that dominated the center of the table. It showed a 3-dimensional map of local space, with red zones marking Korthak-controlled territories and blue zones showing the growing alliance of free worlds. "Because we're not trying to fight them the way everyone else did," he replied. "Every species they conquered fought them individually, using traditional military tactics. They adapted to those strategies and perfected their conquest methods over centuries." Ambassador Kelthara's form shimmered as she leaned forward. "Your species has existed in space for less than a century. How can you claim to understand warfare better than civilizations that have been among the stars for millennia?" David smiled, remembering his sister Sarah's words about human nature. "Because we've been at war with ourselves for our entire history. We've perfected the art of conflict in ways that peaceful species never had to. We understand guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, resource denial, and asymmetric tactics." Groundbreaker Thane's voice rumbled like an earthquake. "The humans speak truth. My people fell to the Korthak because we fought them honorably, in open battle. They had no honor and showed no mercy." "Exactly," David continued. "But more importantly, we're not just offering military alliance. We're offering something the galaxy has never seen before: complete integration of resources, technology, and tactics across multiple species." The display changed to show the remarkable developments of the past 6 months. Human shipyards had been retrofitted with alien technology, while alien worlds had been equipped with human defensive systems. The result was a fleet of hybrid vessels that combined the best of 17 different species innovations. "The Korthak expect us to fight like separate species," David explained. "Instead, We fight as one. Elder Yonth of the Crystal Mines, whose body appeared to be made of living gemstone, spoke in harmonics that made the air itself sing. Your proposal is unprecedented. Never has the galaxy seen such cooperation between such diverse species. But the Korthik Empire will not simply allow this alliance to grow. They will move to destroy us before we become too powerful. They're already moving, David acknowledged. Our intelligence networks report massive fleet movements throughout their territory. They're preparing what they call the Final Cleansing, a campaign designed to wipe out every species in our alliance. A collective shiver seemed to run through the assembled representatives. The Final Cleansing was legendary among the galaxy's enslaved populations, a last resort tactic the Korthak used when conventional conquest failed. "How long do we have?" asked Ambassador Kelthera. 3 months, maybe 4, David replied. They're mobilizing everything, battle fleets, world crackers, even their planet-killer superweapons. Queen Zeeth's wings buzzed anxiously. The humans speak of fighting as one, but we have seen no proof this alliance can survive such an assault. My hive worlds cannot commit their remaining ships to what may be a hopeless battle. David had been expecting this objection. Then let me show you what we've accomplished together. The holographic display shifted again, now showing real-time feeds from across the Alliance territory. What the representatives saw made them gasp in astonishment. Above the ethereal homeworld, human engineering crews worked alongside ethereal energy shapers to construct massive orbital defense platforms that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Near the Stoneheart clan's mining worlds, hybrid ships with human tactical systems and Stoneheart durability patrolled space lanes that had been empty for decades. This is the Harmony Station above Earth, David said, highlighting a massive structure in orbit around the blue-green planet, built in 60 days using combined technology from all Alliance members. It's not just a space station, it's a mobile battle platform that can coordinate fleet movements across multiple star systems simultaneously. The station was breathtaking, a fusion of organic curves from the hive worlds, crystalline focusing arrays from the crystal mines, dimensional anchors from the ethereal collective, and human tactical networks that tied everything together. But this is just the beginning, David continued. Show them Project Unity. The display changed to show something that shouldn't have been possible, ships that were simultaneously human, ethereal, Stoneheart, and hive world in design. They weren't just hybrids, they were completely new vessels that incorporated the best features of every species' technology. Impossible, breathed Elder Yonth. Our technologies are completely incompatible. That's what we thought too, David admitted, until we realized that incompatibility was just another problem to solve. Humans are very good at solving problems that seem impossible. Ambassador Kelthera's form brightened with excitement. You've created truly universal technology. This changes everything. It does, David agreed. But more than that, we've created universal tactics. Every species brings their own way of thinking about warfare to the Alliance. The ethereal collective understands energy manipulation like no one else. The Stoneheart clans have defensive strategies that have held their worlds for millennia. The hive worlds coordinate like a single organism. When we combine all these approaches, he gestured, and the display showed a simulation of the upcoming battle. Alliance fleets moved like a symphony, with each species' ships playing their part in a larger strategy that adapted and evolved in real time. The Korthak Empire has never faced anything like this, David concluded. They've always fought species individually. They've never encountered an enemy that thinks like 17 different civilizations simultaneously. Queen Zeeth was silent for a long moment, her compound eyes studying the tactical displays. You're asking my people to risk everything on an untested strategy. No, David corrected her. I'm asking your people to risk everything on each other. The strategy isn't untested. We've been testing it for months. What's untested is whether we trust each other enough to see it through. Groundbreaker Thane's rocky features shifted into what David had learned was the Stoneheart equivalent of a smile. The young human speaks wisdom. My people have decided. The Stoneheart clans commit our full fleets to this alliance. One by one, the other representatives voiced their commitment. Even Queen Zith, after a final moment of hesitation, agreed to commit her hive worlds to the cause. Then it's decided, David said. We stand together. The next 3 months passed in a blur of preparation. Alliance fleets trained together in exercises that pushed the boundaries of interspecies cooperation. Worlds that had been separate for thousands of years shared their deepest technological secrets. And through it all, human diplomatic and engineering teams worked tirelessly to bind the alliance together. When the Korthak Empire finally arrived, they brought the largest fleet in their history, over 3,000 warships, including their massive dreadnoughts and the feared planet killers that could crack worlds in half. They emerged from hyperspace at the edge of human territory, confident that they would finally crush this upstart alliance. What they found waiting for them defied all expectation. The Alliance fleet numbered only 1,500 ships, but they moved with a precision and coordination that seemed almost supernatural. Human tactical networks guided ethereal energy weapons, while Stoneheart armor plating protected Hive-world swarm fighters. The battle formations shifted and flowed like living things, adapting to every Korthak tactic before it could be fully deployed. The battle raged across 3 star systems, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Korthak Empire had brought their traditional overwhelming force, but the Alliance brought something they had never encountered: true cooperation. In the end, it wasn't the destruction of their fleets that broke the Korthak Empire's will to fight. It was the realization that they faced something completely new in galactic history, a genuinely unified alliance that grew stronger with every battle. When the surviving Korthak forces finally retreated, they carried with them a message from the alliance. Not a threat or demand for surrender, but an invitation. The Korthak Empire could join the alliance as equals, contribute their own knowledge and abilities to the greater good, and help build a galaxy where no species stood alone against the darkness. Standing on the bridge of the Harmony Station, Admiral David Chen watched the last Korthak ship disappear into hyperspace. Around him, the Alliance fleet spread out across the stars, ships of 17 different species working together as one. "Think they'll accept the invitation?" asked Captain Rodriguez, who had been promoted to serve as David's aide. David considered the question as he looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other species waited, some hostile, some friendly, some simply trying to survive. The Alliance would find them all and offer them the same choice they had offered the Korthak Empire. "Eventually," he said, "humanity has learned that the universe is a big, dangerous place. But we've also learned that it doesn't have to be a lonely one." Behind them, the communication arrays of Harmony Station hummed with messages from across Alliance space, 17 species sharing knowledge, coordinating efforts, and building something unprecedented in galactic history. They had started as individual worlds hiding in the darkness, hoping to avoid the attention of those who would conquer them. But they had become something more, a beacon of hope that proclaimed to the galaxy that no species had to face the universe alone. And at the center of it all stood humanity, the species that had taken their greatest weakness, their inability to be conquered, and turned it into the galaxy's greatest strength. The age of empire was ending. The age of alliance had begun. In the depths of space, new signals began broadcasting on frequencies that carried across the galaxy. They weren't threats or demands for submission, but something the galaxy had rarely heard before: invitations to friendship, offers of cooperation, and promises that no species willing to stand with others would ever stand alone. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was showing it how.